Hi, everyone. Thank you for spending time with me today, and welcome to my e-commerce and alternative selling method webinar. My name is Christopher Garcia, and I'm the Business Development Specialist at the SBDC at UNM Valencia campus. I created this webinar off of a great article by Tamara E. Holmes called Selling Without a Store, and you'll receive a copy of it in the follow-up email. My contact information is on the next slide, right there. And there's my alarm that this webinar is going on. And a PDF of these slides will be emailed to you following the presentation. So don't worry about jotting anything down. And before we begin, let's go over some webinar ground rules. Okay. Everyone on the call right now is muted, so don't worry about background noise. And there's a feature to raise your hand, and I'll use it throughout the webinar, just to make sure everything's flowing. In fact, I'll ask in just a bit if everybody could hear and see. Each slide is numbered, so if you have a question, please include that in the Q&A. And I want to make sure everybody could use the Q&A, so I'm going to wait just a bit. Bring up my participants. And if you could see, and if everything's flowing well, you could see and hear, would you please raise your hand for me? Perfect, perfect. Sounds good. In the lower hand. And just to test the Q&A, make sure everybody could use the Q&A properly. Can you chat me a hi, hello, how are you? Oh, perfect. Hello, Drew. Thank you for that. Perfect. Okay. Next, I want to allow Leslie Everson, our lovely webinar coordinator, to tell us about some upcoming webinars, because this one's a little bit outdated. So Leslie, if you want to just talk about the upcoming webinars, go right ahead.
Of course I do. That's my favorite thing because we have so many exciting webinars. And I want to remind everyone before I tell you what's going on right now, we have more webinars that we're in the process of adding to our calendar. So check nmsbdc.org, regularly, because I'm going to be loading some more in. But this week, right after this, we have basic steps. We have Cash is King, cash management for your small business coming up. We have a bilingual session on accessing financial resources. We have your website could be a lead generating machine, and then 7 powerful offline methods to increase your business. That's just coming up in the next couple days.
Perfect. Thank you, Leslie. Here are the objectives and agenda for this webinar. I'll explain how the SBDC can assist you, introduce you to a marketing plan, introduce methods for taking your business online or selling in another way, and provide practical resources to assist your business with an online presence. It's a lot to cover in one session, but I think everybody on the call is up to the challenge. And since this is a COVID-19 webinar, I will put up a slide with the most up-to-date and reliable information related to operating a business during COVID-19. Perfect. So here's the graphic for our center location throughout New Mexico, and the mission of the SBDC is to build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses by offering no-cost confidential business counseling and low or no-cost training events like this one. You'll notice a small blurb on the bottom of the slide, and this is a disclaimer from the Small Business Administration. And I just want to distinguish the difference. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, but we are the Small Business Development Center. We are the technical assistance arm, and the SBA is better known for their loans or loan guarantees that they provide. And we're also funded by the state of New Mexico. Let's talk about the services of the SBDC. We offer 2 major services, again, confidential business counseling and low or no cost business trainings. And there are no limits to how much no cost counseling you can receive. We have centers throughout New Mexico, so there'll be one close to you. And if you look at the graphic in the upper right hand corner, it shows what we do. renew, grow, launch, and start up small businesses. We welcome you to our statewide trainings like this one and to participate in your center's webinars and workshops. And if you don't have a center yet, we will assign you to a center, and it's based on your geographic location. You could also go to our website and you could see a listing of our centers and our center staff. This slide shows what we expect from our clients. My fellow business advisors and center directors want you to succeed, so you'll be assigned homework or further research. So please do the work necessary to succeed. We can't make decisions for you or offer tax or legal advice. We can only connect you to the information you need to make an educated decision. And part of making an educated decision is working with licensed professionals like attorneys and accountants. Finally, I want to remind you about important surveys we send out as part of attending these trainings. And everyone who registered for this webinar received an email from Leslie Everson saying, in anticipation of the upcoming e-commerce and alternative selling methods webinar event you have registered for, we would like to collect some preliminary information from you. With this information in hand, we can tailor the course material to better fit your needs. And I want to just do by a show of hands, how many of you received that pre-survey already? Okay, one. So if there, oh, that's not good. Okay, we want you to look in your spam or your junk folder for that pre-survey, and you'll receive another survey at the end of this presentation. It's a follow-up survey, so please do both. Let's see here. Why is a marketing plan important? When changing or adding selling methods, it's because online sales is all about identifying your target markets or markets, analyzing your product or service offering, creating a profitable pricing strategy, successfully distributing your product and service, and effectively promoting your product or service. Every activity you do in business should align with your target market or markets, because these are the customers most likely to purchase your product, aka those customers you don't mind spending money on. If you think everybody in the US is your target market, think again. You'll most likely go broke promoting your product to everyone in the US. So create a perfect customer in your mind, then describe him, her, or it. And they refer to this a lot in conversations about marketing as avatars. I'll also show you a great research tool offered to you at no cost by the SBDC. And I want to use the example throughout the presentation of a women's Western clothing store, because we had a very successful one in Belen. So the ideal customer for this Western wear women's clothing store is a woman with a household income of 100,000 or more, who purchases maybe higher end clothing. And if we wanted to take our products online, somebody who shops online. And you might want to look for people with interest in bull riding, farming, country music. And if products are modeled after famous country singers, you might want to target those who listen to the music of, say, Taylor Swift. Now that we've identified our ideal customer, we can tailor the products or services to their needs and wants. The research tool I'll talk about later suggests the most popular products in women's clothing are accessories, tops, bottoms, dresses, and outerwear. So this store has also been selling products in store, so they know what products are hot sellers, high profit items, and unique to their store only. It's important to keep your online inventory lean because you're charged per posting, per photograph, and per sale. It's also very time consuming to photograph these items, write descriptions, post them online, accept orders, ship orders, handle returns and exchanges, so choose wisely and profitably. And there, the first part of a marketing plan is to identify your target market. Then we have the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. So let's talk about price. Price is also a very important factor in online sales. You may have lower overhead when selling online, but you have other costs to think about, like posting fees, payment fees, monthly subscription fees, yearly website fees, website or online store maintenance, time for fulfilling orders, time for customer questions and emails, and times for returns and exchanges. It also entails navigating through websites, online marketplaces, and payment processors. Do you have the skills you need to do this, or do you need to hire someone? There may be other online retailers selling your same products for more or less, so research the selling price online. There are two common methods for setting a price: cost plus and market pricing. If you have a unique product, you can set a price by figuring the cost and adding a markup. And if you sell a common product, you can research the selling price on online marketplaces by visiting store websites or doing some Google shopping research. In this example, we're selling online. So why is place or distribution important? It's because we have more choices than ever for selling products online and fulfilling orders. You can choose to sell your products from your website. You can use an online marketplace like eBay or Etsy. You could offer pickup or delivery for your storefront, or you can use a third-party app for pickup like Amazon Hub. And I thought it was pretty progressive of Los Unos that they have an Amazon Hub at the Allsubs. After figuring out our product price, place, and place, you can think about promotion. There are more ways than ever to promote your business. So, some common types of low or no cost promotion are blogging. You could create a website. You could do personal selling, which is contacting people in your target market and selling your product directly to them. You could do social media marketing. You could base your marketing style off of word or mouth of product reviews. And you could use other media. And when picking a promotional method, keep your target market and budget in mind. Some interesting ways to promote your product online include paying or giving free merchandise to bloggers and bloggers. This is called influencer marketing. And usually people who do influencer marketing have a big following on social media, and they will usually do it if you send them some of your product. You could claim your business presence on search engines like Google. I know Yahoo does this as well, and so does Bing. And I think if there's one thing you get out of this webinar today to promote your business online, it's to claim your Google My Business page. For this women's Western store, you might consider sending a YouTube lifestyle expert who specializes maybe in country music or something related to your products to promote your merchandise. You could use Facebook ads to target women with our selected interests in places where Western wear is popular. Or you could send a postcard to your repeat clients, letting them know you have an online store. After making those decisions, think of promotional goals like reaching 100,000 viewers on Facebook, track the results, and calculate your return on investment. That's one of the best benchmarks you could use in marketing. So say you spent $100 on your Facebook campaign and reached 75,000 viewers. That's less than a penny per viewer. And I think that's a pretty good campaign. To learn more about marketing, please take SBA's Marketing 101 webinar and use their worksheets. So I do a whole webinar just on marketing. Let me open that link for you all. And I base it off of SBA's Marketing 101. I take an hour learning opportunity and I turn it to an hour and a half. But if you want to get the information right from the horse's mouth, take the Marketing 101. It's a set of videos and it basically goes over marketing plan just as I presented it: target market, product, price, place, promotion, benchmarks, and goals. And here are the Marketing 101 worksheets. These are awesome. If you do anything for your business or want to create an effective marketing plan for changing or adding a selling method, I suggest taking a look at least these two: the Marketing 101 checklist, which will help you really put your ideas about who is your target market, what is your pricing, what are your promotional methods into perspective. After that, do the Marketing 101, a guide to winning customers, which helps you organize your thoughts by target market, product, price, place, and promotion. And it's free. So take advantage of these free learning opportunities while you have the chance. go back to our slideshow. Okay, so it's very important just to think about your target marketing plan before you do any online selling. Now let's talk about selling online. Many people think it's less expensive and easy to sell online, but that isn't always the case. You must research your options, fees, and staffing to make sure you have the time and sales power to successfully sell online. So I want to do a poll right now, or not a poll, but a show of hands. How many of you on the call today want to sell online? Solely sell online, so only online sales. Okay, good. Perfect. I'm going to lower hands. How many of you have a storefront presence and want to take that storefront online? Perfect. I think this information will be very useful for either method. There are two options for selling online. You could sell directly to your on your website using or use a third-party site. They call it an app like Shopify, or use an online marketplace. So selling directly from your website or using an online marketplace. And online marketplaces include sites like Amazon, Etsy, or eBay. The pro of selling from your website is you save on some marketing fees. The con is you're doing all your own marketing, search engine optimization, web maintenance, tracking orders on your own, and taking on the liability of processing and storing sensitive data. Using an online marketplace is easier because they process payments, track orders, create policies, market your products across the web, and they have an existing client base. If you don't have a website already, you have to create one. Whether you use a web designer or an online website builder, there are 3 components to every website, and it really grinds my gears because a lot of small business owners get taken by a lot of unscrupulous, maybe web hosting places that sell you a domain. But these are the 3 main parts to a website: domain, the code or the design of the website, and the hosting of the website. And the code is what we see. All of these have costs associated with them and require a monthly or annual payment and maintaining your account. So choose your provider wisely. There's a lot of advertising for what they call WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get, website builders. These include things like Wix, Weebly, sometimes WordPress. And these are like all-in-one solutions for a website. And I think they're great tools for just starting out. Google My Business also provides a free website. It's not going to be a sales website, but it's a great promotional opportunity you could get for free. And if you have questions about these free opportunities, put them in the Q&A and I'll talk more about them at the end. When opting to sell online, ask yourself if you have the process and staff to successfully sell online. There must be someone to list items, change prices, photograph your items, write product descriptions, maintain a website or e-commerce profile, return customer emails, fulfill orders, ship orders, and handle returns or exchanges. Each marketplace is different and you could use one or many, but they all require time. Like one of my favorite bands says, your garden will never grow unless you bless it with your time. So fees for online marketplaces run about 10% for product listings, and that includes payment processing and listing your product for sale. Some marketplaces have monthly fees when using a business account. For example, eBay has a personal account and they have a business account. When you have a business account, you use your EIN number when you're registering for that account, and they charge you about $30 to $50 a month, and you get X amount of postings. There's also fees for adding videos, adding extra photos, or paying for SEO or keywords. All of these have fees associated with them. So make sure you're only doing what you're able to handle and afford. Don't waste money posting items across all e-commerce sites or using an e-commerce management software if you don't really need to. So say you're only selling 10 things a month. You're probably over your head. You're probably paying too much for a product that's too powerful. And always keep the interest of your target market in mind and use those distribution channels that most appeal to them. And I see that Q&A, and I certainly will. Here are some popular e-commerce sites that all of us may know. At least we know the first three: Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. And this is just from an article that I found online of the top 10 e-commerce sites. There are many options vying for your money, so choose your marketplace or marketplaces wisely. Very carefully and always consider the interest of your target market. Since online marketplaces make more money as you sell more product, the bigger ones have great learning resources and customer service. So keep that in mind. In the follow-up email, I included links for Amazon Sellers Academy. Let me bring up that follow-up email. There's resource partners, COVID-19. Okay, so there's eBay Seller Center, Etsy Seller Handbook, and Start Selling on Amazon for the individual, and answers to 20 common questions about selling on Amazon for businesses. So those are the top three up there, and these are the guides that give you the most information. My favorite is probably the Etsy Seller's Handbook, and that has tons of information for selling online in general, not just for selling on Etsy. So if you want to learn more about selling online, how to, and what are the best practices, I would start with the Etsy Seller's Handbook. Since okay, let's see here. They also have great blogs and seller events. So Amazon had a great seller event. I think it was Amazon Charge or Amazon Boost, where they had a week of speakers in different industries talking about how they use Amazon to create markets, sell their products. eBay has the same thing. Facebook has Facebook Boost. They have events in person and online that teach you how to sell products solely on Facebook. So say you sold mass-produced women's handbags, Amazon might be a good option for you. If you sold vintage women's dresses, eBay may be your main portal. And finally, if you sold hand-knit cardigans, Etsy would probably be the best bet. Sites like Shopify are e-commerce marketplaces that offer web design services or connect easily to your existing website. And then large WYSIWYG website builders offer e-commerce apps like Wix, WordPress, and Weebly. Wix tends to have, they have a Wix store. WordPress that works with multiple, let's see, they work with multiple add-ins, multiple different types of online e-commerce marketplaces that connect with your website. And Weebly tends to work very well with Shopify since they partner together. Now we're getting into the best practices of selling online. When selling online, product photography is vital to your success. As you can see from the image on the left, it has bad lighting, it isn't very attractive, versus the picture on the right that has good lighting and photo effects added. I never thought selling a bottle of Clamato would take product photography into consideration so highly. I've never been more attracted to a bottle of Clamato than I have than I see in the picture on the right. The difference speaks for itself. If you don't have experience with product photography, take a look at Shopify's article and do it yourself. You could hire a local photographer, and I'm sure they're hurting right now because of COVID restrictions. Or you could use a stock image website. If you sold a common product, you could ask your wholesaler if they have product photos you could use. And be careful when using photos found online because they may be copywritten. And I'll show you an example of how to find pictures that aren't necessarily copywritten. So I included links to the definitive DIY guide to beautiful product photography and the beginner's guide to product photography. I wish when I started selling online that I had read these because I bought an expensive photo backdrop. And this shows you how to make one with a piece of poster board. And they're both just as effective, let me tell you. If you want to hire somebody online to do your photography, you could use a website like Fiverr, Upwork, TaskRabbit. And what these are their websites that connect you with people willing to do work on a contract basis. And here is, I just did a search for product photography. And you could see here that they're pretty reasonable. It looks like people or photographers use this to get work for themselves. They have a rating system. Ooh, that is an attractive picture right there. Let's see. They have pictures of their work. And if this isn't something you want to take on or do, and it's not something I'm very good at, I might want to hire somebody to do it for me. Let's go back to our slideshow. This is using a stock image website, and our lovely webinar coordinator, Leslie Everson, turned me on to this Adobe stock. You could use something like Pixabay or Overstock. Let's see, what are some of the stock image websites? I have to give you 3. Shutterstock, Pixabay, iStock Photo. The one that I learned about from Leslie, it's pretty cool. You could type in say you need something like I think I used the example of a can opener last time. You could purchase one of these pictures and you could use them legally on your website or your e-commerce profile. So say you wanted a picture of somebody using a can opener, that might be a great opportunity for you just to purchase a nice picture from a stock image provider.
They have a good way to filter it too. So you can get all kinds of pictures, and I know the other ones do it too, but they have a way of doing if you want some copy space and all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's better than it's ever been these days, I'm sure. And let me show you how to do a search on Google where you could find things that have a Creative Commons license, which means they don't necessarily have a copyright. So google.com, and let's search again for can opener. Something very mundane, right? You could go to the images area and you go to tools, usage rights, and then there's Creative Commons licenses or those with commercial or other licenses. So, and they're usually not very good, but these are the photos available online that have a Creative Commons license that may not be copywritten. Okay, now let's talk about writing a compelling product description. Here's an example of a good and bad product description. The one on the top is from a private seller on eBay, and the one on the bottom is from the manufacturer of this example, which is Chuka Shoes. And the bottom description is appealing to their target market's needs and wants, is very descriptive, and uses keywords that increase search engine optimization. And keep those things in mind when writing a product description, and read articles like How to Write a Compelling Product Description that I included in the follow-up email. I also included a link to 9 ways to write product descriptions that inform and persuade your customers. There are lots of opportunities to better sell products with great descriptions on sites like Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. And I've noticed that many sellers on Amazon maybe don't speak English as their primary language, so things get lost in translation, or don't provide the buyer with the information they need or want. Always keep your target market in mind when writing these descriptions. So these happen to be women's rain boots. So think about what attracts a woman to these boots. Where will they wear these boots? And about their buying behaviors and interests. Also use compelling keywords. So whenever you're listing products for sale online, or you're trying to get your search higher in the rankings, think about everything in keywords. That's how things are indexed in these databases. So these are the words that databases closely associate with a product or service. If I were to talk about boots, I might use keywords like waterproof, leather, rubber, comfortable, durable. And in Chuka's product description, they use sleek, plush, waterproof, rubber outer sole, self-cleaning, and rainproof. Okay, now that we talked about selling online, let's discuss pop-up shops and flea markets. I grouped these two together because they have many of the same requirements. They just cater to two different markets. Pop-ups cater to high-end markets and flea markets cater to a more general audience. Pop-up shops are a lot of work and take lots of planning because you have to follow state, municipal, and county licensing requirements, get proper inspections, purchase insurance, which is optional but vital, and it takes a lot of market research and planning. Pop-up shops are usually used by established brands and are great ways to take your product online or to take your products from online to storefront, to test new products or product bundles, and test locations or demographics for maybe you want to start on a physical store. Where should you do that? And you could test the locations or demographics that way. So let's take a deeper dive into permitting and licensing by looking at the SBDC at UN and Valencia's quick start sheet. So let me open that up. I'm going to get it from the follow-up email. I'm going to close some of these things that I have open now. So this is a sheet that I created for the area that we serve, which is Valencia, Torrance, and Socorro counties. And you really should start at the bottom and go up. So the first part in creating a business, even if it's just a pop-up store, is to choose your business structure. So if I was doing a pop-up shop and I might take on more liability than I want, an LLC might be a good business structure for me. If I'm doing this in conjunction with somebody else, maybe a partnership, a limited partnership, an S Corp. If I had special tax requirements, maybe I'm in a very high tax bracket, my partner isn't, an S Corp might be the way to go. This, you would have to consult your accountant or an attorney on that one, but that's your first step in creating any business. And you do that through the New Mexico Secretary of State's office. When you choose your business structure, anything but sole proprietors use their social security number and they take on full liability. They have to register with the New Mexico Secretary of State. So that's everybody but sole proprietors. And when you do that, you have to put a physical address and a mailing address, and that pretty much establishes where you're taxed. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Next, you have to get a federal employer ID, and you get that. It's free to apply for, and you get that through the IRS. And this is used in lieu of your social security number. Even if you're a sole proprietor, you could get an EIN number, and it's required to open up a bank account at most banks and credit unions. After you get your EIN number, you could get your gross receipts tax ID number. And if you're selling products online or in a storefront, you have to pay gross receipts tax on your sales. You could pass this on to the client or customer like they do at Walmart. We usually they collect the gross receipts tax and we pay it. And then they pay it to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. If you're selling special things like beer, maybe you're selling cigarettes, you have to pay an excise tax. And you also pay that to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. It's free to set up an account, and they have webinars that talk about taxation a little bit further. Then you have to get a business license anywhere you're going to physically conduct business. So you could have a LLC from your home, but if you were going to set up a pop-up shop, say in Bosque Farms, maybe you live in Los Unas, you'd have to get a temporary or yearly permit in Bosque Farms. And that really sets up your nexus. And let me tell you, the regulations in most municipalities and counties for temporary business permits were created in the 1910s and 20s and govern businesses like revivals, traveling carnivals and circuses, and door-to-door salespeople. So this goes to show how long it's been since most places thought about mobile commerce. This means government hasn't caught up with commerce, so you must create effective working relationships with the municipality or county that you're working in. Now let's go back to our slideshow and take a look at some examples of pop-up shops that I found online. So anybody who grew up in the Albuquerque metro area, or I think New Mexico as a whole, they might notice that Spirit Halloween store pops up in storefronts, vacant storefronts in their area during the Halloween season. They also have an online store that's open year round, but this is a good example of a pop-up shop that also has an online presence. And I always remember as a child loving to see the pop-up Spirit shop. They also do this as places like Goodwill and Savers thrift stores. They'll have a costume pop-up shop. Let's look at West Elm. So West Elm is a high-end furniture retail, online furniture retailer. And they went into, this was an older link, but they went into high-end department stores. And they do pop-up shops in high-end department stores, so you could see their products and maybe they could test a demographic. So see REI Co-op. So West Elm shows furniture at REI. It's just a way for them to work with other businesses that cater to the same target market and bring in new product offerings. So say maybe you sold, or a good example here in Los Lunas is there's a great cafe, and they also host a farmer's market. So people who go to the coffee shop, they are the same demographic of people who like to shop at farmers markets. It's a win-win for both. Let's go back to our slideshow. Oh, I like to give this example too. Mene is a fine jewelry manufacturer. They sell solely online, but they decided to pop up in Selfridges in London. It's an example of them using or taking their products into a place that serves their same target market. And then the most appetizing of my examples is Cheetos Pop-Up Restaurant. And this was probably done more for advertising purposes than for taking a online product to a physical location. Cheetos probably wanted to garner some free publicity, so they created a pop-up in Tribeca. And they created a restaurant. They hired a chef to make recipes using different Cheeto products. But if you wanted to do something like this, remember, you have to rent, you have to create a lease to rent the space. It has to be a commercial space for rent. Whether you want to sell designer clothing on the side of the road, it has to be a piece of commercial property, and you have to have a lease before you could get that business license. And if you wanted to do a pop-up restaurant like this, you would have to go through the New Mexico Environment Department and get inspected. And then that leads into our next slide, which talks about food trucks. So let's talk about food trucks, because those are a trendy thing to do now. Just like with pop-up shops, food trucks and carts are permitting intensive and require great logistics skills. In order to operate a food truck, you need to be in compliance with the New Mexico Department of the New Mexico Environment Department as a mobile kitchen. And this requires using a commercial kitchen as a commissary. After that, you have to find commercial space to park your food truck. This means contracting with property owners or managers and leasing a space, and then consistently parking in that area. You should also consider a location with lots of traffic and a high concentration of your target market. So for most quick service restaurants, they usually serve people with incomes of 50,000 or more. This type of distribution is great for testing a new product for an established brand or testing a location for a new business. It's important to make a good working relationship with your chosen area's planning and zoning department, because they could make or break a business idea. I mentioned target market earlier, and you need to draw awareness to your new business, and this means promotion. How are you going to reach your target market, especially if you're in more than one location? You need a website, you want to promote on social media, You want to do a postcard mailing? It depends on the market research you do and the target markets you serve. So let's look at some examples of local food trucks that have an online presence. So here's Sanchez Taco, New Mexico. I passed their truck. It's on Main Street in Los Lunas by my house. And you notice them right away because they have a big graphic on their truck. It's very noticeable. But say I wanted to buy Sanchez Tacos. It's a Tuesday. They only park in Los Lunas usually on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They have a website where I could find locations. I could look at a menu. I could see videos, and they have contact information. So a lot of times these mobile businesses seem kind of sketchy, but if you have a website with contact information, I think it puts your customers at ease. And if maybe they saw something at your pop-up shop, they can't live without it, they could contact you here. Let's go to the With Love Waffles. And the next two only have a Facebook presence, but they have an online presence nonetheless. And they're located at Unser and Central, very high traffic area. And they tend to post pictures of their product offerings on social media. And that really gets people going, and it whets my appetite at least. Now let's look at the last example, which is Crazy Dave's. I think they have the best product photography of all of the businesses I showed you today. I think they just took a very mundane image, put a filter on it, and it just looks very appealing to the target market. And then they, of course, have pictures of their burgers. And remember, when you're using these social media sites, this person hasn't posted in a very long time. Keep consistent and be consistent in your posting. The more you post, the more people will see your product, the more you're in their mind. Okay. Oof, that's a lot to cover right now. All the different selling methods in Tamara E. Holmes's article. So I talked about our research tools earlier, so I want to show you how these research tools could really help you in one of these ventures. So I'm going to first talk about Census Business Builder if it decides to cooperate with us today. And I just like to go to google.com, and there's a link to it, I'm pretty sure, in the follow-up email, but I just type in Census. And as you could see, I've been there once or twice already. And then you go to the census.gov web address. Don't go to the .com or .org. It's always the census.gov. And there's two types of Census Business Builders. There's the Small Business Edition and the Regional Analyst Edition. And let me look at a show of hands. How many of you are located in a rural area? If you could raise your hands for me. Okay, cool. And I'm guessing the rest of you on the call are located in a more urban area. Perfect, thank you. I'm going to use the example of a rural area because I'm in a rural area. But if you're in an urban area, the Regional Analyst Edition might be a little bit better for you because there's multiple zip codes, multiple census districts. In most rural areas, you have maybe one or two zip codes. The Business Edition is much better. So everything in this database is sorted by NAICS codes or NIAC codes. These are codes created by the federal government that group businesses into industry groups. They have some quick link buttons here. So we're going to use maybe the example of a food truck today. But if you need help finding your NAICS code, please reach out to your local business advisor because we have to put them into your client records when you become a client. So we're going to use food trucks today. And then let's do Belen, New Mexico. You could, well, and I could do Belen, New Mexico, which is a city. I could do the zip code 87002, which is Belen, the city of Belen and the unincorporated areas of Belen. I could do a county. Belen's located in Valencia County. And I could do a census district, but I'm not going to get into census districts right now because they're not as helpful for you. Let's use Valencia County as an example because there might be more information. Then you have two options. You could go to a map or you could create a report. I like to just create a report because I'm a more read it and learn type of person. And the map tends not to work so well during these peak times. And this happened to us last time. Census Business Builder is probably very busy during this time of the day. So try to use it early in the morning or late at night. Let me see if I could find an example of a Census Business Builder report. I'm going to stop share real fast. So when Census Business Builder wants to cooperate with us, here's a report of all other personal services, which is a NAICS code that I just happened to use for this report in Valencia County, New Mexico. Let's see if I could make this a bit larger. And I'll go over the high points of this report. So this report gives you demographic information. Percent, if I was marketing something to children, I would want to see how many children are under 5 years old. If I was going to do maybe a pop-up shop for Halloween costumes. Median age, if I was marketing something to people in a certain age group, I would want to know what the median age is. There's some racial characteristics. Okay, here's some socioeconomic characteristics, percent with a disability. If I wanted to start up a medical supply store, that might be very helpful to me. Educational attainment, maybe I want to start up a tutoring service that catered to people in rural areas and it was solely done online. That might be a great place for me to offer maybe SAT prep courses. Percentage of maybe Spanish speaking. Maybe I wanted to start a restaurant that created or a food truck that catered to authentic, that was really had authentic Mexican food, or maybe catered to pies made or sweets made with local produce. I might want to target something like that, a demographic like that. And then here's the housing characteristics is great information for my tradespeople on the call. If I was gonna become if I wanted to start a plumbing business, or I had a plumbing business, I wanted to serve a rural area, I might want to know what the median owner occupied housing unit is worth. I might want to see how old the median home is. I think in this case it's like, oh, it was built in 1987. If I wanted to create an apartment building, is it cheaper to buy or is it cheaper to rent? And it looks like it's cheaper to buy in Valencia County. This gives you a little bit about building permits. That I don't find this too very helpful, especially in rural areas, because there's not a lot of information. And my favorite part of this is consumer spending. So let me see if I can make this larger. And this is probably the most helpful for everybody on the call or those wanting to sell online. So say I'm selling something online, I'm using my own website. Let's say I'm selling women's apparel online. This will give you an example of what is the average household expenditure per year on women's clothing in Valencia County. And if I was going to do maybe a postcard mailing, maybe I'm going to offer a coupon, maybe I want to do Facebook ads, but I don't have that big of a budget. I could target certain counties. I could target certain states. I could target certain zip codes. And this will help you find those places that are with people who have high expenditures or are most likely to buy your product or service. Pet food, pet services. We spend a lot on pet services. We have a lot of dog groomers in this area. Household services. They don't give you everything, but they give you a lot of stuff. And that's the value of Census Business Builder. Let me show you a report that will put this in perspective for you. We're still building a report with Census Business Builder there. And these are databases available to you as SBDC clients. The universities or the SBDC pay a lot of money to use these databases. So if there's anything you could get out of the SBDC, it's to make an appointment with your business advisor and pull one of these reports. And the one I go over with anybody on our initial session, anybody who has an initial session with me will get an IBIS World report in their industry. We're going to use food truck. And when you're going into a business venture, it's this is information put together by economists that talk about the future of the industry or business segment. And if I was going to invest my money in anything, especially a business, you know, if you were going to buy stocks, you would definitely want to know what the industry is going to do over the next couple of years. And this is the report that helps you with that. If you're already in business, you want to see what's going to happen over the next couple of years in your industry. So let's look at the key external drivers. I call these the economic drivers. So what drives food trucks? Consumer spending, consumer confidence index, healthy eating index, urban population, and agricultural price index. So as these things fluctuate, so will your business. Who are my main suppliers? And food trucks are probably dealing with this now. They have set prices, but the cost of meat has gone way up because of supply chain disruption and COVID-19. What do you do then? And then your first tier buyers are consumers in the US. If you produced a product, or say you were that women's clothing store and you actually made all your own, you were a manufacturer of the clothing too, you would have first tier buyers, which would probably be clothing stores, and second tier buyers, consumers in the US. You need to understand your customers before you could sell anything. This report tells us what those economic drivers are going to do over the next, say, 5 years. Here, this is an older report. It tells us what they did between 2015 and 2020. A lot of the economists don't want to speculate on what's going to happen over the next few years because of COVID-19. So here's revenue in the industry. It looks like it's going to slightly decrease, but pretty much stay the same between 2015 and 2025. Profit in the industry looks like it's going to decline, or it declined between 2015 and 2020. Profit margin, it looks like it declined a little bit, but whenever I see a low profit margin like this, that means you're selling in bulk or you're selling at a high rate. At restaurants, you want to turn over tables. In food trucks, you want to sell a lot of product quickly. The number of businesses between 2021 and 2025 looks like it's going to stay about the same. Employment in the industry looks like it's going to stay about the same. And wages in the industry look like they're going to stay about the same. Here are the products and service segmentations in this industry, and this is across the United States. So it looks like American food is the best type of industry to enter as a food truck. And then that's followed by, let's see, Asian food, desserts. Oh, yeah, come by my house for some desserts, that's for sure. Gives you the SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the industry. A lot of us hear about that V-shaped recovery on the news. This is a good example of that V-shaped recovery. So it looks like everything was doing okay before the epidemic. Then it went down during 2020, and it looks like it's going to bounce back up during 2021, 2022, and 2023. So it looks like 2022 is a sweet spot. That might be the time when I want to start a venture. And now I'm looking for target market, because that's probably my favorite part of this report. It tells us who are the markets of this industry. Before we go there, let's look at where this business is in the business life cycle. It's in quantity growth. When I see a business that's in quality growth or quantity growth, that tells me that it's probably a good time to go into that business, or that business is going to be profitable that year. If I see something in the maturity, it's going to be hard to compete. If I see something in the decline, that's probably a business that I don't want to invest in. But that's just my opinion. If you want to learn more about this, talk to a finance expert. There's our product and services again, but in a graph. I like the little circles better. And here are our major markets. So for food trucks, we're serving consumers aged 25 to 44. Looking back at that Census Business Builder report, what areas can I serve with high concentrations of people between 25 and 44? Where can I find large concentrations of people 55 and over? And then as we go, the last part of this report that I want to show you is the cost structure. So if you wanted to start this business anew, you needed funding, you wanted to go to an alternative lender like the Loan Fund or DreamSpring, you'd have to put together a 2-year financial projection. And this report has a cost structure of businesses from across the US. It tells you what you should expect to spend on purchases, on wages. I don't want to make everybody sick with my scrolling, but it's here, I assure you. Most of those reports have cost structures, and this will really help you with financial projections. Take my word. And then the last database I want to show you, because I want to leave some time for Q&A, is Data Excel, or it used to be called Reference USA, and they still have it listed under Reference USA. So this is one of the best marketing tools that you have access to as an SBDC client. If you were serving other businesses as your target market, or you wanted to see what businesses you were competing with, we could search for those here. So say, and this again is sorted by SIC codes or NAICS codes. Say I wanted to find, I don't know if they have one on food truck, let's see. They do. Food truck, so I want to find all the food trucks and stands in the Albuquerque metro area. I could do zip code. I could do a radius from an address. And I could find 18. So if I was a food truck, these would be the people I'm competing against. And then I could do some market research. What are they selling? I could also see, I could do a map for you. Where are these trucks located? This might not be a great information, because it's probably whatever they use as their commissary, or wherever they have their business registered with the Secretary of State's office. But you could see from this, look, the South Valley doesn't look like it's being catered to very much. The East Mountains don't look like they're being catered to very much. Maybe this zip code right here isn't being catered to. Could I put a food truck there? Is it worth my while? Funnel cake. Let's see here. Let's go back to Reference USA. That's the business to business, or maybe you manufactured a product for food trucks. We could find businesses like that. One more that might pertain more to you is the lifestyle search. And say I wanted to do one of these postcard mailings to a certain demographic. Maybe I want to find people in 87031, 87002, which happens to be Valencia County's zip codes. I want to find one person per household. These are the ones that I could find names and addresses for. Estimated home value and estimated home income. If I was a tradesperson, I would want to know home value. If I was selling something related to the home, home value. Everything else, home income. Most retail cater to households earning 100,000 or more. That's your target market. Those are the households you want to spend money advertising to. I could find those. And you can't legally call them or email them, but you can write them. And here we have a listing of the people, the households in those two zip codes with an estimated household income of 100,000 or more. If you needed help finding a place and you wanted to find other characteristics, say you want to find those households with $100,000 or more, but had a consumer snapshot or a lifestyle characteristic, I could sometimes pull them based on lifestyle characteristics. So maybe I sell clothes like sort of like REIs, which are catered to people who like outdoor recreation. We probably want households earning 100,000 or more. In these zip codes, yes, I could use lifestyle characteristics. So I could still see those households or those people in those zip codes earning more than $100,000 a year and have an interest in outdoor recreation. Say I want to send them all a coupon. I want to mail them a letter saying, you know, we're gonna do a pop-up shop on in Belen on Main Street and River Road, and we're gonna sell outdoor recreational clothing or sports equipment. There aren't any sports stores in Belen, so that might be a good idea for a pop-up. So those are the databases we have access to. Those are some ideas about how they could help you in business. And that is my biggest recommendation to you, is to reach out to your business advisor in your area to get a hold of those databases. Okay. So now I want to talk to you about using social media as a sales and marketing tool. Many people come to my office to tell me that social media marketing is going to change their business outcomes, but that's far from the truth. I want to show you when and why about social media marketing by concentrating on Facebook, since that's what I'm most familiar with. Before you begin any social media marketing effort, do market research and put intense thought into your target market or markets. If you don't know who you're serving and what they like, you'll not have success on social media, and you'll spend a lot of money advertising. The target market on Facebook tends to be women 35 to 55 with higher incomes and typical consumer interests. If you have a retail store or restaurant, this is a great place to start. When you dive into a social media marketing platform, think about using their paid advertising services and learn how to use them. And I like to demonstrate a Facebook boost on the center's Facebook page, but I'm looking at the time, I might want to save that for the Q&A if you have questions about that. Facebook also has a great learning resource called Facebook Blueprint. And if you want to use Facebook as a marketing tool, take advantage of the free learning opportunities on Facebook Blueprint. Facebook also runs on viewer attention and interactions. So the better you know Facebook, the better they do, and they might actually gain a customer or two from you. Okay. Some other helpful resources are listed on this slide. My favorite and most practical is Google My Business. So let me show it to you. And if you take nothing else away from this webinar, it's to claim your Google My Business profile. If you're a home-based business, you don't have to list an address. You could list a search area or a service area. And here's that example of what it is. So when somebody searches for electricians near me, that's what it looks like on the phone. This is what it tends to look like on the desktop computer. And it's you claiming this information, updating this information. And what Google lets you do is they let you post photos, they let you post updates, they let you post services. If you sell products, they let you list your products and where they're available for sale. And they give you a free rudimentary website. If you want to take advantage of it, you could even buy a domain name for it. Okay, I have Social Media Examiner is a blog that features social media marketing experts giving great advice. New Mexico Internet Entrepreneurs is a Facebook group created by Barb Tomlin as a forum for New Mexico internet entrepreneurs to connect, get helpful tips, and post new ideas. The New Mexico Small Business Development Center and SBA websites have numerous free learning opportunities, useful articles, and great documents, so please visit these websites. The New Mexico Bar Association keeps a database of attorneys who pass the bar and exam in New Mexico and allows you to search by location and practice area. So if you need the advice of an attorney, this is a great place to start. They also offer a service where they connect you with an attorney for a 30-minute consultation. And finally, the New Mexico Council of Governments handles traffic counts. If you're in the Albuquerque metro area, they have an interactive map. If you're in the rural areas of New Mexico, they issue a report that gives major intersections and the traffic flows between them. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department has an awesome website with webinars. They offer twice a month. And the IRS has the Self-Employed Tax Center, which gives you information about everything you need to know about your federal tax liabilities. Take advantage of those. And they're on the follow-up. If I mention them in the slides, they're on the follow-up email. Here is my slide for COVID-19 safe practices, and here are the websites that are most up-to-date and relevant. So the first is for the New Mexico Department of Health's guidance for employers. The second is for New Mexico Safe Certified program. The third is for OSHA's publication on employer COVID-19 safe practices. The fourth link is for information about COVID-19 from the Center for Disease Control. The fifth link, and most important in my view, is an article by the EEOC called What You Should Know About COVID-19 and the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. The sixth link is for the newmexico.gov website, where you could find the most up-to-date state information related to COVID-19, as well as lending and grant opportunities. And don't forget about the no-cost webinars and counseling services offered by the SBDC, SCORE, Small Business Administration, and the New Mexico Economic Development Department. And since you've been so good for the entire webinar, I'm going to include a link to our partners and sponsors of the America Small Business Development Conference Comply Right, and they have numerous learning resources about human resources. Okay, now that we talked about how we can help you, this is how you could help the SBDC. As part of offering our services, we need your help to ensure our services are around for many more years to come. So we ask that you participate in our surveys, report economic impacts because of our assistance to your advisors, and write letters of support to your local legislators about your experience with the SBDC. All information is kept confidential and is only reported in aggregate to our funders, the state of New Mexico, and the Small Business Administration. Perfect. Okay, we went over a lot of information, so let's review what we learned. 1, market research and planning is important. You now have the resources you need to make better educated marketing decisions. So take an hour each month to use the SBA's marketing plan template to make a plan or to revise your plan. 2, know your target market or markets. This is the least you must do before you spend any time or money on any promotional activities. 3, do you have the skills to set up and manage an online store? Now that you know the major activities involved, does this seem like something you can or want to do? Did you think selling online was so labor intensive? Now you know. So do you have the staff to answer customer questions, ship and handle returns? 5, if you want to start a pop-up shop, are you able to meet the state and municipal or county requirements and tax requirements for your venture? And 6, and most importantly, are you prepared to handle the extra cleaning requirements, mandatory capacity limits, and ever-changing regulations for public safety? What if your pop-up shop had to close for 2 weeks because somebody tested positive for COVID-19? Have you planned for that? And are you aware of what you need to do? Next, this slide provides contact information for SBDC programs, PTAC, IBA, and the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a government-funded program providing assistance to small businesses who want to sell their goods or services to the government, educational institutions, or tribal entities. The International Business Accelerator is a one-stop shop of resources for the New Mexican businesses and individuals wishing to introduce their product or services into the global market. And the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator offers no-cost confidential counseling regarding intellectual property. This slide continues the list of small business resource partners: SCORE, or the Service Corps of Retired Executives; WEST, or the Women's Business Center; and VBOC, or the Veterans Business Outreach Center. And here's contact information for your small business support team. We are funded by the SBA, and many people ask about SBA loans. So here is a link to the SBA resource guide. And the Small Business Administration doesn't usually directly lend. They usually offer a loan guarantee, which makes it easier for you to get a business loan through an alternative lender or a traditional lender. Here's what the guide they use looks like for our area. This is the New Mexico edition, and this is 2020. They're sure to put out 2021 soon. And on page 27 of this guide are the SBA participating lenders. If you are in business already, a traditional lender might consider you for a small business loan. If you're not in business yet, you want to put together a business plan, financial projections, and you want to present that to one of our alternative lenders: DreamSpring, the Loan Fund, or WEST, Women's Business Center. And then the New Mexico Economic Development Department has lots of great information about tax credits available to you, or grant opportunities for businesses that want to expand or start in New Mexico. This concludes the slideshow, and now I'll go into the Q&A. I'm going to take 1 or 2 minutes. So Leslie, if you have anything you want to talk to the group about, you go right ahead. And then I'm going to get into that Q&A, and I'll allow, since we have a smaller group today, I'll allow you to speak if you have any questions.
Sure. I just want to update everyone on some of the stuff that I know Chris is going to be sending a follow-up email with the links to all the information, because he's really good about giving homework. So you're going to have a lot of stuff to look at. But we also have this webinar today is pre-recorded on demand for 7 days on our website. So you can go and look at any of the websites that have been pre-recorded for the past 7 days. Then what we do is we upload them to our YouTube channel. And on the YouTube channel, we have our entire series of webinars that has been going on for at least the past, oh gosh, of course my days run together, but at least the past 6 months. So you can visit the New Mexico Small Business Development Center YouTube channel, and you'll find a list that you can watch of all the webinars that you can watch at any time. There's some really good ones. You can kind of click into them, see if it's something you like, pop out and see one of the other ones.
Thank you, Leslie. I needed to catch up with my voice.
I understand.
So let me go into that Q&A. Wendy asks, please talk more about Wix. And I do enjoy talking about that. So what Wix is, it's the WYSIWYG website builder. And they want to be a they really are a one-stop shop for anybody who wants to start an online business. Not only do they offer website development, they offer they're a registrar for webinar domain or website domains. They could sell you a website domain, and they also have email marketing tools and search engine optimization tools. Pricing for these things, if you're a business, see, these are just personal website plans. Make sure you're going into the business and e-commerce plans. They tend to be a little bit higher. And they really, what you need to think about when you're getting one of these plans is, are you going to have a lot of videos on it? How much storage space do you need? So do I have a lot of very high quality images that I need to put on this website? And how much care do I need? So do I need a lot of customer service? How many products do I need to list from on my e-commerce platform? How many products do I want automated sales text taken out for? There's none on the basic plan. 100 transactions per month on the unlimited plan, and 500 transactions a month on the VIP plan. So how many products am I selling or planning to sell? Okay, Wendy asks, how exactly do I schedule an appointment with an advisor? So you could go to the website, nmsbdc.org. Since you've taken this webinar, you've signed a client agreement with us. So you're in our internal system already. You want to go to locations. And we just changed our website a little bit. So it's at the bottom here. We have, here's the Albuquerque metro area. Here I am in Los Lunas. And here you could find the contact information for the phone number and the email addresses for the people at that center. Or you could go to their page. Find out a little bit more about them. So if there's a special notice, right now we're working from home until August 1st. It's only going to be Zoom visits. You could see who our partners are and just get into contact with us that way. Leslie, do you agree that that's probably the easiest way?
It is the easiest way. If they do want to email me, go ahead and I will send over information. So I think everyone's got my email. So if they run into any kind of problems, let me know.
Thank you. And then I have a question. What is my opinion on retail arbitrage? Let's see. I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I don't think buying, if you have a retailer in your area that has products that are on sale and they'll sell for more online, why not? I don't think you're going to have large margins unless you're, I remember that Tickle Me Elmo, if you're old like me, you remember when everybody wanted that Tickle Me Elmo, people were buying it at Walmart for $10 and selling it online for $500. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we're in a free market. I think it's a very smart idea to do if it's profitable and if you're able to do it. And now I'm going to just allow you to speak. You're on mute though. And if you want to speak, just raise your hand and ask a question. If you have any more questions you want to ask in the Q&A, go right ahead. And while we look at that, I'm going to show you a little bit more. While we wait for a question, I'm going to show you a little bit more about Google My Business. I just want google.com. So here's what our Google My Business profile looks like. Let me show it to you from the back end. So here's what it looks like from the back end. And I mentioned earlier that website they give you for free. This is what that website looks like. It's created off information you enter into your profile. And they give you an address right here. So if I wanted to use this, it would be Los Lunas-Small Business Development Center SBDC.com. Or no, it would be Los-Lunas-Small-Business.business.site. I could buy a URL, something like this, if I wanted to, for $12 a year. And I could make very few adjustments to this website, but I think it's a great opportunity. Say if you were a home-based business, a service provider, you have you could only use what themes they offer. And they only have a few themes. I probably like that one the best. You could choose what kind of button you have here. You could put up different posts, so you create those. You could put up your logo. These are different posts we've put up in the past. You could manage your reviews. That means if somebody left you a review, you could reply to them. I think that's very important and a best practice. You could put in an about us. You could change the title of this to something else. And you could put in a gallery of photos. So this could be adding images of products. You could adjust the map, say it's not showing exactly where you're located, and you could update your address information and your hours of operation. Since we have our other website, we don't need this one, but it's just a great tool. Here's what the reviews look like. They allow you to edit your response, give a response to a review, and I think it's very important that you do that. Here's where you could change your business information. And then you could view what it looks like on your search. So this is what you're controlling when you do that. Q&A. Let's look at our participants. I don't see anything in the Q&A. So I'll give you guys a little bonus. I'll show you a tool that I like to use to create images for things like websites, social media, and it's a great tool to edit images too. It's called canva.com. And I call this Photoshop for Dummies. I can't for the life of me get a hang of Photoshop. I've taken a class on it, just don't get it. If I wanted to create an image to use online, they have templates, so logos, for example. And this gives you the tools you need to make these really attractive images for use online in your promotional and marketing material. And they have prefab templates, or you could create your own from scratch. I think the templates are very helpful. Whenever you're using this program, you could pick colors from hex color codes. And Adobe Photoshop has a free resource. They have a color palette generator. So say I just have an image I want to use, maybe it's an image of my storefront. I can upload that image. Let's see if I have an image on my computer. Here's the new educator's lunch from the Berlin Chamber. And it will select colors and create a theme for me. So if I was creating a website, if I was creating a logo or a flyer, these would be the colors I'd want to be consistent in using. These are my company colors. And I think that's a pretty theme. You could also use the color wheel and find colors that you like by yourself. So say I wanted I like that yellowish orange, but maybe I wanted to go a little darker, maybe a little lighter. I could adjust it there, and that is my color code. That is my hex color code. You also have the RGB. So if I was in Word or Publisher, they use RGB, and then I would just enter those numbers and create my color. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. We had a smaller group today. I think I'll let you guys go 5 minutes early. Leslie, I will see you again in 30 minutes. And if you don't have anything else, we could end the webinar.
That sounds good. I don't have anything else, but I do want to remind everyone, if you run into problems signing up for the no-cost counseling, I've already said it once, but I do want to reiterate it that I'm available if you need any help.
Thank you for that, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for
Bye.
spending time with us today.